Attention everyone, may I have your attention? We have now concluded the discussion and brainstorming process, and now we will be calling upon each group for their report out. So we're going to start on the left side with Mr. Silas Ryane.
So for our table 3, we tackled the first question, which talked about why do people resort to violence, and we talked about anger having an impact on the cause for violence. We talked about a lack of self-love. We also talked about those who may have love, but others around them who don't, and as a result, they may find themselves having to defend themselves. We talked about the condition of violence being accepted as a norm. We talked about family, strong families, but also positive strong families. Sometimes there are families that reinforce violence through generations, but we have to have a positive track with respect to the commitment to nonviolence being passed down. Some of our solutions included making sure that we understand that when you have more to lose with violence, you won't choose it. So, understanding your value, understanding what you have to lose in those situations that cause you to consider violence, and then if you have a better option, then by all means try to choose that option. We had a side discussion about options and how in some situations we focus on choice, but oftentimes it's really more of a conversation about a lack of options. And so sometimes those of us who are not in the direct line of fire with respect to violence, we assume that those who are making a choice, and it's really more about a lack of options. We had a discussion in number 2 about who's impacted by violence. And initially the conversation was around who's directly impacted, who's most impacted. But then we started to kind of unpack around the scenarios where people who are indirectly impacted have as much trauma that they carry with them as well. One of my partners at this group talked about a violent situation that I happen to know about because of a personal situation with a neighbor of mine who was murdered this summer. And so we talked about how at the end of a violent situation, the remnants of it, whether it be blood stains or yellow tape, how that impacts children, adults, and all of those who live in the community. We talked about denormalizing solutions, how to model conflict resolution, how to, give me one second. Oh, we also talked about the fact that in some situations, there are people who are more impacted based on their age and based on demographics, but how the violence that is happening, the victims are outside of that range and sometimes older than the folks who are most impacted, and that's also having an indirect impact on that most at-risk group because they're now seeing people that are older than them also being victims. They don't often see a pathway to being older in life. We talked about the roles of community policing. And so for question 4, the one thing that law enforcement can do is increase community policing. With respect to health and human services, we talked about more research. With community leaders, we talked about modeling resolution options. For community members, reinforcing that modeling once they're taught that by the leaders. As far as advocacy, we talked about the programs, but also collaboration. There are a lot of entities in the city that are doing great work, but a lot of times they butt heads, whether it be for funding or whether it be for territory, so to speak, but just making sure that there's more collaboration. With respect to schools, making sure that there's trauma-informed care, so understanding the students that are coming in your classroom every day, for families, normalizing nonviolence, and then for the faith community, making sure that the community is a part of the life of the church. So having them included in activities, kind of like the commitment that the church has had for so many years with CJCC.
Thank you very much. So, in the interest of time, we're going to switch this up just slightly, and we're going to have each group report out relative to one specific question. So, whatever that question is, you can come up and report on that, and then we can expedite this process so that we can get to the roundtable discussion. Next up, number 7, lucky number 7.
Good evening. I'll be brief, I promise. I think that I'm going to focus on question 1. And so we looked at poverty, and not just poverty, but systemic poverty. I should back up. So why do individuals resort to violence, was the question. Lack of education, opportunity, as well as knowledge. Early trauma that's also often unresolved. Family dynamics. Lack of role models of healthy conflict. Safety, so people feeling safe in the communities that they live in. Criminalizing behavior in some spaces and not others. And toxic masculinity.
Next up, number 4.
All right, good evening, everyone. So, our group unanimously selected to speak on number 2, and that was who is impacted by the violence and what are their reactions. And in our conversation, we spoke on, let me see how this, that taxpayers are impacted, that families are impacted, law enforcement, communities, neighborhoods, schools, and children that have been traumatized and ultimately result into PTSD. So we talked about children in having responses to violence with fear that ultimately can result into other traumatic and violent acts. And the same thing for families. We didn't talk about retaliation as a response sometimes to violence. That is something that is pretty critical. And so we started our conversation going down it could have been a really deep rabbit hole as we started talking about the impact of the origin of violence in America, and we went back to how is that related, and we got into philosophical conversations about history, and so I want to have a history class so that we can learn more from one another about this topic. But this is it. We have a response to a response, and as a team, we thought that the children's trauma and PTSD was the most impactful.
Thank you. So next up, we're going to lucky table number 11.
All right, so we decided to focus on questions 3 and 4, specifically the practical alternatives that can be used to denormalize violence in the community and identifying actions that specific groups could take to do so. And what we decided was that there needs to be a broad strategic plan across agencies in the city, specifically geared towards violence reduction. Each agency should have a specific component that's focused predominantly on violence reduction and their funding should also be tied to their performance with respect to reducing violence. Also, making sure that that strategic plan touches both the federal and local agencies that operate within the district and serve the population, and ingrain whatever solutions we come up with into the institutions such that changes in administration, changes in funding won't affect the provision of the services. We also said that we needed to broaden our view on how the government's role in violence prevention. So often when people think about violence, they look to law enforcement, police to address the violence essentially once it's already happened. But taking a closer look at, social services and the things that get to some of the root causes of violence that the other groups mentioned. Specifically, for some of the agencies that we said could do different things, Health and Human Services could have violence prevention as part of their routine health care offerings, have a violence prevention strategy, provide free basic medical services, community members can serve as role models and enforce the standards of the community, schools can have a violence prevention curriculum, churches can mobilize their memberships, have mentoring programs, and serve as a host for resources and services. And then law enforcement would make sure that their community engagement efforts are consistent across the board.
Outstanding.
Legislation, and I'm here tonight with a few other moms who are part of the Washington, D.C. community, and we wanted to hear what everybody has to say. It's been a really interesting evening already, so thank you so much for having us. And then I went to get a cup of water, and they suckered me into being the one who wants to you guys. So, but there's been lots of great ideas said today from all the different groups, and we, in our group, thought about a lot of the same things that people are talking about, so I'm just going to highlight one thing that was in question number 3 on who is affected and who is impacted by gun violence. We had a really great discussion about what does community mean. Obviously, a community is affected by gun violence, whether that community means the nuclear family, does it mean the expanded family, does it mean the faith-based organization maybe the family goes to, the school that the victim or the child of a victim went to or goes to, does it mean a ward? Does it mean the entire city of Washington, D.C.? Does it mean the DMV region? And how, based on which community you're talking about, how big this ripple effect is, what is the solution that goes into countering violence, stopping it, denormalizing the violence? And some of the solutions we came up with were having more coverage of the long-term effect, the long-term impact on these different communities, on these smaller communities as they expand out, so that the victims and their families and the survivors are not forgotten. When you don't forget them, it denormalizes violence. And what that means is going all the way from that nuclear family to somebody who lives 5 or 6 miles away, starting a meeting and saying the name of victims who have been impacted by violence the previous 30 days, which is something we do at Moms Demand Action. So, that's okay, this is what, yeah, okay, yeah.
Next up, table number 9, don't be shy.
I'm never shy. So we decided to talk about number 3, and we focused a lot on what the community could, can, and should be able to vision what they could do. We talked about mindfulness that starts in elementary school. So a lot of times we don't address impulsiveness by teaching children to in ways that are, of course, developmentally appropriate. So I made the example that my daughter would take a problem that was this big and her solution would be this big. And so teaching children about proportions to conflicts that they impact or that they encounter. And then looking at how impulsiveness is, how much of impulsiveness comes from scarcity. A lot of times people ask, how does somebody shoot somebody for their shoes? And you say, it's an impulse to getting what you think you want at that moment. You're not actually thinking through that entire thing. And then it's important for a community to define together how they want to be in relationship with each other. And then the community's role in making sure that that determination stands up throughout all of those things, that it's consistent, we hold each other to the same standards. And then, of course, and I see Charles Allen here, is to actually make sure that we open the Office of Violence Prevention that was already funded through the NAIR Act 2.5 years ago. So we don't actually have an Office of Violence Prevention as a separate entity. I think that's probably where we want to start. Like most of the people said, that's where we should start. So also not treating trauma and violence as just individual and isolated things. That it's kind of like when someone gets sick from the water, you don't just go to that house and give them an antidote, that you treat the water for everybody. And so making community changes that affect everybody, even in thinking about just the individual who is affected. And then, lastly was redefining what we call violence, so that we look at violence as also being food scarcity, as being housing instability, and that we also have the same reaction to all forms of violence, so that it's not just gun violence. Then we're also talking about violence against women and girls, that domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, all raised to the same level of importance in our community as does the kind of visceral violence we see in here on TV or in our neighborhoods. And then also developing a community where we learn how to ask for what we need and get our needs met. A lot of times we aren't able to articulate or identify what we need, and that's both children, us as a community, as a collective, and we talk a lot about parents. So this is coming out of our discussion about parents, that we tend to forget that a lot of these things are generational, and so there are skills that we all don't have, skills that people do have, and being able to marry those things together for a stronger community was important.
Thank you. I want to make this day returning citizens, and I will discuss questions. Okay, we have a long discussion. Start out with more community programs. But we also say that others should be able to talk about this themselves as well, in the process that we do through love one another. We also talk about a healing relationship. We also talk about peer education. And we have many examples of owning our own buildings in our community. Less incarceration, reducing contact with the legal system, education on alternative calling the police, race relationships, building relationships with our neighbors, both of us to live near our neighbors who won't even speak to them many years. We need to get back to changing our culture of drugs, alcohol, and preventions, increase financial resources, collaborate with nonprofit groups, public health approaches, community approaches.
Our group wanted to answer question 4, specific actions on how these groups denormalize violence. And for law enforcement, we said it was particularly important for police officers survey where they should live in the communities that they're policing. For community leaders, we said that they should be staying in DC. That the city could support affordable housing opportunities. For faith-based institutions, we said that they should really be joining the movement. They should be coming out of their physical spaces, the sanctuary. The churches should be coming to where the people actually are. For schools, we talked about how we should kind of talk about restorative justice. We talked about healthy masculinity training, trauma-informed care, and conflict resolution in all the DC schools. For health and human services, we talked about creating crisis centers. We also talked about whether these crisis centers should be run by more of a government structure, or if it should be a nonprofit, or who should be running these types of crisis centers. That's something we also discussed. But the important point there was that there needs to be like communal, it needs to be like a collective community space or building that everybody can access. And then finally, we talked about building healthy, trusting relationships between these groups and in the communities. And then finally, we talked about health-based institutions, schools being pillars of the community, that they should be a refuge for the community. Churches and schools are needed to create these sanctuaries and safe spaces. Thank you.
Hello. So our group talked a lot about the same things that we touched on. So I think one of the interesting things that came out of the discussion is that a lot of the members here talk about their own personal experiences with mediating conflicts and their own violence. So I think a couple of lessons that they sort of drew from their own experiences was one, the value of personal relationships, and that is indispensable to situations where you have folks doing this kind of work or going to mediate conflicts, allowing those same individuals to continue in that work for long periods of time so that you don't frustrate the relationships that you build. It's really important. The other one is meeting people where they are, so going out to the communities where folks are located for targeted services, meeting them in their homes, in their places of worship, whatever it might be, so that they're not being forced to come to government buildings where they may not feel comfortable, and instead of residing in their communities, still receiving services. And I think the other part of that is making sure that we as a government are constantly educating citizens as to the services that are available. Because I think for a lot of the issues in the district, there actually isn't means doing the exact work that someone's saying, I have a problem, and they only find out after repeated phone calls, being directed to multiple agencies and open doors, there's in fact a very specific person who's doing that exact kind of work. And so making sure that district agencies are constantly educating the populations that they serve, so the services they have available to them is really important.
Thank you very much for your participation in this exercise. And so now we're going to move directly towards our roundtable discussion with our respective panelists. And with the panelists, please come forward, Mr. Silas Grant, Ms. Ivy Hylton, Ms. Dana McDaniel, Del McFadden, Ms. Ryane Nickens, Ms. Lashonia Thompson, to be moderated by Dr. Roger Mitchell, Jr., the Chief Medical Examiner for the District of Columbia. Thank you.
Let the panelists get settled. Why does everybody just stand up for a second? Just stand up where you are, just kind of reach up, put your fingertips, reach up, get on your toes, reach all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. All right, shake it out, shake it out. All right, good. Now y'all can sit back down. to see you. I've been the chief medical examiner now for nearly 5 years. It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this. As it relates to this, I see violence at its end result. So I see all the homicides in this city, all the suicides in this city, all the deaths, child abuse, elder abuse, you name it. And now still dealing with the opioid crisis that many believe is not affecting our community, and it is quite affecting our community, particularly older black men and women in this city. So we're here to talk about violence, and you have this esteemed panel. I'm going to ask the first question, and you can incorporate your bio into your question, but because of the keeping with time, just know that I'm going to kind of talk while you're talking, just to kind of move you along if you're taking too long. But I want you guys, and you guys have their bios, it was handed out so you can read about them. But I'm going to start at my side of the table, and really we heard a lot today. We heard about trauma, and we heard about a comprehensive response by government, and who's affected in the community, and police living in community, several things that we heard throughout. So Mr. Grant, if you can start us off, what have you heard today that might inform the work that you're doing, and change the work that you're doing from here on? So everybody else gets a long time to think about the answer to that question. Mr. Grant doesn't get that much time. So, Mr. Grant.
I believe that, Manona and I had a conversation prior to the beginning of this event, and the one thing we came to a conclusion on is that, no one owns the solution alone, right? So what I've learned is really a reinforcement of that concept. We talked a lot about the role that each group plays in this process. And for a brief period with the trend of churches leaving the district, I was questioning the role of the church in this process. And so, talking to the interim pastor here tonight gave me some encouragement that the church still has a role in this. That's the one thing that's important.
That's good. Mr. McFadden.
What I take away from the process of looking at the responses to the questions is that it takes a village, it takes society, it takes us all to have a coordinated effort to address these issues. And I think tonight, looking at the various communities responding to some of the acts of violence, the shootings, is really going in and doing some asset mapping, looking at the assets and the jewels that already exist in these communities, and being the catalyst as far as supporting what's already there. No one agency or no one person has the answer or the silver bullet to all of these issues, especially looking at the 4 questions for tonight. There is a great sense of urgency, and it really shows that we have a lot of work ahead of us to do, and we only can do it as a village.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson-El.
Testing. As I was thinking about your question, Dr. Mitchell, the thing that came up for me was the conversation that we had about the stop snitching culture.
Okay.
And I looked at it in a different light today, because I never looked at it as like the cause of violence. I know it's a thing in our community, and it prevents us from solving a lot of crimes, but I had never thought about like it can be the reason for crime. And we talked about the fact that young people don't feel that they can go to anyone, not even a trusted family member or a mentor, a teacher, or anyone about being subjected to violence, because even that is considered snitching. And so they believe that their only alternative is to respond with violence in order to maintain their dignity, stay in integrity with their peers. So I think for me, I want to push harder in restorative justice,
and in my work with Cure the Streets to help people understand that when you are a civilian and you are being subjected to violence, that you have a right to speak up for yourself, especially when you're talking to a trusted adult who's not a police officer, who's a mentor, or who's a teacher or a family member. So yeah, I'm gonna push harder in my community to try to change that norm.
One of the things that has impacted me the most in the conversation that we had in our circle was the role of the family and the impact of violence and social conditioning, and how we as restorative justice practitioners need to spend more time teaching families how to have conversations with one another through the circle process, building relationships, and I'm going to call it through re-educating and re-engaging ourselves at the family level. We talk about community engagement, but I'm taking away family engagement from this conversation to address social conditioning with and teach intensive reasoning and how to think deeper and build deeper relationships within the family.
That's good. That's good.
Dana McDaniel, DYRS, and our agency works with youth. So a lot of the responses from today's conversations have led me to the notion that we have to start to see our youth as symptoms. Any youth that comes into care or any system needs to be perceived as a red flag, a warning sign from the community from which they come from. We have to minimize the effort that we put into fixing the youth and seeing the youth as the problem and actually address the root. Every child that comes into a CFSA, a DYRS, any system of care, we need to take a look at the community, the home, the school, the household, the family, the area or neighborhood that youth or culture that youth comes from. So let's no longer put our work into the symptoms and let's get to the bottom of the root of what's happening and the cause of what's happening to our children, because they're merely just a side effect of a damaged, broken system in the community.
Ms. Nickens.
So I think we have, listening from our conversation at our table, is that we have the entities in the room and the entities of this city to change the narrative, but we lack a strong relationship with each other to do the work. And if we can get to a trusting relationship with each other and with our communities, then we can start to change things. And it all starts with healthy relationships with each other.
So that's good. I heard a lot there. One of the things that's ringing out to me is the youth as a symptom. I wanted to hit you with this, right? Because the reality of, you got it, right? So let's talk a little bit about it. I'm going to allow for whoever wants to answer, okay? This new normal that CJC has us talking about, changing the narrative. One of the things that I say, the big thing is 1 out of every 3 black men are engaged with or have contact with the justice system, right? So y'all know that statistic. But what about the 2 out of 3? Do we talk about the 2 out of 3, the 66% that aren't connected, do not have connection with the criminal justice system? 66%. And then really the 1 out of 3, half of those are bogus, right? Half of those, the 1 out of 3 that are engaged in the criminal justice system might not be real. It could be rooted into institutional racism or structural racism. So some of that, we tell a story about ourselves as African Americans in community and urban settings that may not always be the narrative that can be told, right? So I'm saying that to say that's just me talking. What new narrative do you want to tell? Whether it's a new narrative that you already are aware of, in your work in DYRS or outside in engaging with young people directly with restorative justice or the work with the TraRon? What new narrative do you want to tell about the work that you're doing that's already evident? Or what is your aspirational new narrative in our community surrounding violence that you want to tell? So what is the new narrative that you have? And say, listen, nobody knows this but. Or what is the new narrative that, man, if we had this, if we could do this, this is what we want to happen.
I would say that I grew up within walking distance from here, and I'm almost 40 years old. I've never seen a period where people that are at risk, people who are aggressors, people who may be, the most susceptible to violent offenses, I've never seen a time where they are most open to positive opportunity.
Okay.
Right? So this city has changed so much. Everyone notices it. The guys who are the shooters, the guys who are engaged in that activity, even that population is now saying, I want a job. I'm so surprised to see some people that I know that are actively looking for jobs, that are currently working. And I think despite what we see on TV every night at 10 o'clock, we are in a space where the people who need the help are most likely to listen right now.
Wow.
So I think that's the narrative that we've got to push. Secondly, I think we have to start talking more about the success stories, but talking not from a sense of totally individualizing the stories, but trying to pull out the skeleton of success. Like, what are the commonalities in my success story with my people that I work with, Dale's people, Commissioner Gray's people, all these folks I see in the crowd who do this great work, whether it's TraRon Parker, all these folks. What's the commonality in our success stories, and how do we build a skeleton that we can pass on to people who are new to the work?
That's good. Anybody? Devin? Mr. McFadden?
For me, the new narrative is the Pathways program. I look at 24 individuals who were enrolled and 18 successfully completed that program. We met with them yesterday. They're still on their jobs. The main thing that they stated is that they had a global perspective shift. So their mindset was able to shift. And they're ready for the world. They were so excited yesterday. And Silas knows they interviewed one of them today who's attending Georgetown University to become a paralegal. I think that's the new norm, to have 18 individuals under the same roof coexisting from all different parts of the city, not one incident. And so the common denominator, as Silas stated, is that these individuals are now open for opportunity. And the one thing that they said about the Pathways program is that it gives them something to look forward to, and it clears the sense of where they can go, where they're to attain their life goals. So I think that's the new norm for us at the One's office.
Yeah. Anybody else? I mean, you don't have to, but anybody else?
The new narrative for me, in my utopia, would be to help my community to understand that violence is a disease, that it spreads like a disease, it can be treated like a disease, and that if you actually look at the clusters in this community where most of the high-risk individuals on supervision or where most of the crime is taking place, you will be able to visually see how crime is an epidemic. And if we treat it by helping people to understand that they can change their norms, the same way we did with cigarette smoke, to me is the best example. Because when I was growing up, people were smoking everywhere. They were smoking in hospitals, in restaurants, everywhere. And now to see somebody walking down the street with a cigarette is just like not normal. So young people in our communities in general need to understand that violence is not normal. For some people, including myself, I was raised to believe that that was how you respond to the threat of an attack. You defend yourself with violence. And we have a lot of young people that are willing to defend themselves at all costs because they don't understand that this is a learned behavior and that there are other ways to resolve conflict.
Telling the story of a new narrative.
A new narrative. The new normal, as I see it, is going to be to stop and think inward before responding outward, and to create more opportunities for learning to manage the intellect by introducing concepts like deep peace, introducing concepts like positive thinking. And we just came back from India, where it was a global peace conference of over 70 countries. And one of the simplest answer that I heard, and my husband is on this campaign, is to learn to be kind and to have a positive thought. So it's almost based on the concept that the universe is mental and all is in the mind. So if we can somehow capture thought forms that ultimately result into positive action, that's the new normal. How to stop and go inward first before we come out.
That's good.
Just briefly, I think that if we're going to have a new narrative, you must first have a new storyteller. Oftentimes, the voice of the shooter or the victim or the heartbroken mother is not told by those people. So our next panel should have 3 shooters, 3 victims, and a surviving mother. We have to give new voices to the people, to the voiceless, and stop allowing the story to be told by professionals, journalists, psychologists, experts. The real experts are the people who are directly impacted. So if we want a new narrative, let's change the storyteller and allow the voices of the people to be heard.
For the kids that we work with, we are redefining what success looks like. What success is. It is not a material thing, but it's what you wake up with and feel pride in doing. So taking the narrative back from the rappers, from the celebrities, the athletes, that you don't need a big house, you don't need a big car, a nice car to be successful or to feel successful. You can be a janitor, and as long as you are living right and doing right, that is the equation of what success is for you. Whatever you want to do, but taking that narrative of success back and letting them be who they want to be, and not letting a national narrative of you have to have a Bentley, a chick with 18 inches down her back, and all these other things to be successful in life.
Yeah. So, in keeping with time, I'm going to ask this last question to you all. And because I want everyone here to walk away with something to do. All right, something to do. Okay, and those of us that are in the room, and I recognize many, are doing this work on a regular basis, and may not need to know what to do next. They may be able to offer themselves what to do next, but you're the panel, they're not up here. And so you get an opportunity to tell us what to do next from your vantage point. You can talk about it through the lens of a best practice or the lens of a promising practice, and be able to kind of give us some instruction on what's next. You already have been doing that in the panel and challenging us, but I want you to kind of think a little bit. That's why I'm asking the question about 4 or 5 times, while I'm giving you an opportunity to think about it. Mr. Grant is ready to go already, but what the challenge us to do something next as we leave here this evening.
For me, from where I sit, I think it's important for all of us when we engage with those who are more in the line of fire, and when we consider violent acts that happen around us, we should never trivialize that conflict. So if Dale and I are having a kitchen table conversation and we're considering a story that we heard on the news about 2 young people that got into a conflict, and we find out that it was over a video game, or it was over a basketball game, or it was over someone saying something on Instagram, we shouldn't trivialize conflict. because it may not be important to us, but it's important to them. And so even if we don't understand the conflict, us not understanding it doesn't mean that it's true. And so if it's important to them, the closer we get to understanding the importance to them, the closer we get to the resolution, or at least being a part of that resolution. So if you and I think that that situation is stupid, we'll never be able to resolve it. So we gotta have respect for the fact that they have a value system, maybe it's different than ours, but we should never trivialize conflict.
And we're gonna go with Ms. Nickens next, and then we're gonna meet in the middle, okay? All right, and have our sister that just got back from India, give us the last word.
So this work is hard emotionally and mentally. My takeaway for the people in the room, because you're doing the work, take care of yourself emotionally and mentally. Because if you are not there, then our community misses out on what you offer and the solutions you bring to the table. So please engage in self-care and take care of yourself, because we need you.
That's good. That's good, Mr. McFadden.
I think having the ability to meet the community where they are, understanding the context that certain things as far as trauma, lack of educational attainment, things have happened for them to make the decisions that they're making, and being able to support them as much as possible. That is where my mind is as far as supporting those who need, our most vulnerable residents who need the support the most.
Ms. McDaniel.
I think we have to first keep in mind that this is the business of saving our people. So this isn't voluntary work, this is mandatory work. 50 years ago, people would sit in churches just like this until 10, 11 o'clock at night. We wasn't checking our phones and checking our watches to get back to our television show. And we did it 5, 6, 7 days a week in order to move our people forward. So we have to understand that this can't be your work. You can't be good at this when you clock in. This has to be your life. So when you leave here on the way to your car, if you don't say how you doing to that little young black boy that's about to be walking by, you already not doing this, living this work. If you go to your own apartment and you walk past a group of young men and you don't know their names, you already not living this work. So you have to understand, this isn't voluntary, this isn't an assignment, this is mandatory, because this is the business of saving our people. So make it your everyday life what you do. So the next brother you see a Family Dollar asking for 50 cents, although you may not give it to him, at least ask him how you doing, brother, have a good day.
Thompson-El.
My takeaway would be to encourage everyone in the audience to reach out to the Cure the Street staff, the management, and the violence interrupters and outreach workers who are in the communities trying to do this very, very complicated and a tough job of interrupting violence and changing community norms and teaching and treating people who are at high risk of committing violence. Some people may know that the NAARC, the National Association for the Advancement of Returning Citizens, is leading that initiative. Week, where they have an amazing staff of 20 people that are from these communities that have the highest amounts of gun violence and homicides. And I think that if people in this room was to invite them to the agency, invite them into the BOP, invite them into the DC jail, I think that they could be helpful in changing these norms in all of these spaces, because they come from these communities, they've changed their lives, and now they are ambassadors to try to end gun violence and prevent shootings and homicides. And I think if you meet them, you'll learn from them, you'll realize how remarkable they are and how important they are to this work. And your staff could probably learn a lot from them in terms of how to engage the people who you work with to continue to do this work, because we have people that's coming home. We need them to come home with the right frame of mind. We need them to come home so they can help us do this work. We need those brothers to go inside and help prepare them. What we know is that a lot of the violence is trickling from the street into DC jail, into BOP, and we think that these individuals have the key to try to end some of them.
That's good. That's good. Ms. Hylton.
So I was sitting here listening to everything and everyone, and Ms. Nickens and Dr. Mitchell spoke of self-care and to use a best practice as a takeaway. And the best practice that comes to me is mindfulness and restorative justice. That mindfulness is just simply being aware, paying attention. And the restorative justice side of this is finding the balance in life, restoring harm, repairing relationships, and starting with ourselves. So I want to end with a best practice experience for like 30 seconds. If you would allow me, I'm going to invite you to just take everything out of your hands, off of your lap, sit in your chair as comfortably as you can. And allow your shoulders to droop down, down, down into relaxation. And then gently close your eyes if you choose. And just take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs with air, and then exhale slowly through your mouth. And this time, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, exhale the tone E. Inhale deep, and exhale E. Take one more breath in, filling your lungs with air, allow your shoulders to droop down, and exhale. And now with your mind's eye, just visualize this city in a total state of deep peace. Feel the peace that is in the room right now. And go and translate this peace throughout your entire being. And re-energize with this exercise at least 3 times a day. Peace begins with you.
Let's give the panel a round of applause. And bring up our fearless leader, Ms. Noam Butler, for closing remarks. Thank you. Thank you, panel.
Another round of applause. Thank you so much to the panelists. I think this brain trust out here, because you're the ones that got it started and really did what we wanted us to do this evening. I am really thrilled. This concept came as a result of a conversation about what do we do? What are we doing? And there's a lot that's happening. And what I'm so energized about is the fact that we can talk about a new normal for us in the District of Columbia. We have the context here. We can talk about a narrative. The charge is, in addition to feeling peace, we also have to feel power and empowered to do this work. And so I'm hopeful. I am also encouraged, but I'm even more convinced and committed that as a community, and the community has different layers, we're going to get this done. It's not going to happen tomorrow by me alone. It is we. And I really appreciate your comments, Ms. McDaniel, because at the end of the day, so we had some of our young people from Court Social Services tonight here. They're not going to be here for a long time, right? But we have to come and we have to meet folks where they are. So the fact that they were here, for the time that they were here, is so critical. We're not going to dismiss or deny any voice that has a part to play in making this city all that it needs to be and all that it actually should be. I expect nothing less. We should expect nothing less. And so with that, I want to acknowledge I've gotten some materials from Court Social CSOSA, the Court Services and Offender Supervision Agency. You received this flyer. So I want to give a shout out to CSOSA. There is Living Beyond the Dark Days, Survival Matters to Us, Wednesday, October 24th at the 6D Community Room. this continues, this work continues. We are doing this all day, every day. So we need to be a bridge and a network for one another to share this information, all of the good work that's happening. We also have the U.S. Attorney's Office has an event, Sanctuary Security Program. Are you prepared? Tuesday, October 30th. I know, again, the point that was made, this is not voluntary. This is mandatory. We have responsibilities to ourselves, our families, our community. I thank you so much for your time and your talent that you shared with us this evening. The last request, because we want to take this and move this forward. Conversations are great. Our community conversations are important. The work is critical. We provided you with comment cards. Take a few moments and provide us with feedback. We've been taping this. We want this to not just be a conversation that we've had amongst ourselves. We're going to share this with the community because, like a lot of things, it can get viral if we do our part. So let's make this notion of a new normal, a new narrative viral. Let's make it go viral. And we have the opportunity, and we have the bandwidth and the brilliance here to do just that. The last thing I want to note is I started with acknowledging some of our members, and I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, not only I talked about our young people that were here, we have the illustrious panel, we were also joined by a couple of additional CJCC members. Folks live this day in and day out. It is not just a job. So let's not be fooled, even with we talk about our government officials. So we have the director of CSOSA, Jim Berry, here. We have the director of pretrial services, Leslie Cooper, here. We have the chair of the judiciary, Charles Allen, here, and participating and listening as a part of what we've done this evening. Thank you so very much, and the work continues. Thank you. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. One more thing. Let me acknowledge our CJCC team here because they have done a lot of work. So thank you very much for everything from tablecloths to name badges and everything else. Thanks, everyone. Good night.